now that I've just about got the steering straightened out on this Studebaker, then I'm starting to look at other things that makes it more of a car that I can happily drive around wherever and whenever I want to. Now, one of the things about this car is it has a gas gauge here that doesn't work. And Mike said to me one time that he said it was because of the sending unit, and if it wasn't so much trouble to get to, he would have fixed it. Now, I looked at it, and I crawled under it and looked at dropping the tank. Then I got to thinking about taking this thing here off. This whole piece right here. So I went inside the car and I was able to loosen bolts from inside the back seat, which basically seemed to have turned this thing loose so that I can lift it up and lift it off of there. So I had to take the bumper off, and not too many things, but let me get my camera stand over here so I can sit y'all on it, and we will lift that off and together discover what's under there. What I'm hoping to see is that great big gas tank. By the way, there's a little bit of story that goes along with that gas tank. I gave Mike the tank, well over 40 years ago, when he was first working on this car. It was some kind of steam pressure tank or something that came from the place I used to work, and he made it into his gas tank. And that was kind of cool because I had a little bit of a hand in helping him build the car because of that. And he did things for me. He painted a race car that we had back then. I think I might have given him a roll cage too. I had some cars. He wanted to race at one point. I think he was putting together a mini stock, and I had an old roll cage that I didn't think we were going to use. One thing led to another, and he painted a car for us. But anyway, that's beside the point. Here, right here, is just off of here. I don't want to scratch that up anymore. It can help. So there's my gas tank right there. And here's my sending unit right here. And I should be able to take this sending unit out and test it and see why it doesn't work. And make it work. Without even having to drain the gas, I believe. So let me get an air compressor and blow the dust off of that. I don't think I need this anymore. If I'm able to get that out of there, that should turn that into a pretty easy fix. Either fix or replace whatever's keeping it from working. I actually had a sending unit, a new one that I bought, but I think I might have had a universal one. And I might have given that to Rusty with the Crosley. It may have been a Crosley one, I don't know. Anyway. That's what it looks like. I'm going to play with it for a little bit. I'll be back. Okay then, I went online and looked, and for $22 I can get a brand new sending unit just like that one, and a brand new gauge for 22 bucks, and they say they can have it here in 2 days. I find it hard to imagine they can get it here that quick, especially since 2 days from now is a Sunday, but I've had FedEx or somebody come here and deliver something on Sunday, so I just went ahead and ordered it. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick this sending unit back in the hole just to just to stop up any place where that might leak. And I'm just gonna, this is pretty full tank. I filled it up on the way back a while ago, so I'm gonna ease her down in the garage and just park it. But if I wanted to drive it, I could, just like it is. I'll take all the little nuts and bolts and every little piece and part that came out of that and put them back. So I'm gonna stick a little silicone on that piece and stick it back in there. The reason I'm gonna put a little silicone in there is to keep it from leaking. This didn't have a rubber seal here, and even if it did, it wouldn't have been a flat surface, so it may have had a rubber seal on there, but you can see where it's leaked a little bit. So yeah, I'll put a little silicone in there and drop that back down in there, and then we'll park this back out back and get me a little box, put all my pieces and parts in that little box. And then after that new gauge comes, I'll pop it on here. And you have no idea how happy that's going to make me. For today, I'm going to stick that back in there, box up all my nuts and bolts and pieces and parts, and then we're going to call it a day. I'll go in the house and make some videos. I love y'all. Appreciate you hanging out with me. Today is Friday. I still got Saturday to work on this some. And then, yeah. And then Sunday we go to church and stuff. And then maybe by Monday I'll have my part and we can stick it back on here. Wouldn't that be fun? Oh, the joy. We were here the other day and working on the gas tank. The gas tank sending unit. And the gas tank sending unit goes right here. That's the old sending unit right there. Now, I found out that I could order a new sending unit and gauge for about 22 bucks, so I did. The new sending unit appears to be just like this one. I have not disconnected the gas gauge inside the car yet, or any of the wiring, because it makes sense to me that if the unit is what's gone bad, it's pretty easy to replace that unit, a lot easier than rewiring and rehanging the gauge and all that. So that's the first thing I'm going to do, is bring that unit back here, stick it on here and see if that makes the difference right there. Here is the box that the new unit is in. By the way, there's a lot of people say a lot of things about Amazon, but man, I like them. When you can go on there and get yourself a new gas gauge and a unit, sending unit, and have it delivered in 2 days, and pay less for it than you thought you'd have to pay for either part by itself. I mean, how are you going to beat that? And it might be that we're employing some poor Chinese workers, but you know what? The Chinese people need to live too, you know. We don't necessarily, I'm not trying to starve the world. I mean, what kind of way would that be if we did that, you know? So, yeah, I don't mind if they make a little money. In fact, I think they should. Everybody ought to make a little money when they work, you know. Yeah, honest day's pay for an honest day's work and all that stuff. Sure. What do we got here? Let's see. I bet that's the gauge. And that's a piece of cardboard. And oh good, that's the sending unit. It looks just like the one that's in there. I'm going to put this on here to get the rod the right length and everything, but yeah, that's going to be good. Let's take a look and see what the gauge looks like. Gotta be careful not to lose the nuts and bolts that are in here with that, but that's a decent looking little gauge. I could use that. So I'm gonna put it right back in the box, because that's in a little plastic bag that ain't sealed, and there's some nuts and bolts in there, and I don't want them to get messed up. So let's put that right back in there, and we will take that one out and set this one up and put it in. Oh, the joy. Now this unit has a ground wire right here. First thing I'm going to do is undo this wire right here. This is the wire that actually goes to the fuel gauge. And this wire right here goes to the ground. I'll set my screws over here to the side. This will come out okay. Oh yeah. So I'm going to need to hook this up the same as this one. See, this is the new one. I got a nice long rod, but I need to shorten that rod literally down to this long. In fact, we're going to need to get to a table where we can sit with this and spread it out, set everything up. Oh, the joy. So one thing to pay attention to is that these holes are not equally spaced. They are unequally spaced for a reason, and the reason is that when you take one out and put one back in, you want to have this face in the right direction. I think in this case it's that way. But I need to, when I put this on right here where my thumb is, needs to go to right there. So I'm going to slip this up and over all of this. Try not to lose where I got my thumb. Bring that up to right there. And I should be able to look down through here and see where each one of these holes are and see light through it. Now, I'm going to use one of these screws for here, but over there I think I'm going to use a different screw because Mike used a different screw, and that's what's going to fit over there. So I am going to take this over there, line up the two holes that are the closest, and then we'll sit that on in the car. Now I believe this is going to go in like this. And like I said, I got to get these holes lined up. One there, one there, one there, one there, and one right there. So I'm gonna take one of these screws and put it over here in this hole. Now this hole over here needs to have this on it, this ground. I don't know if you can see that or not. Needs to have this ground on it. Okay, now this wire should go right there. And there's two washers there. There's actually three washers there. One's a lock washer, and then there's two flat washers. So that goes flat washer on bottom, flat washer on top, lock washer on top of that, and then this screw on top of that. Now if this is working, I should be able to go in there and put the switch on, and it should show, it should not show empty. The way it was setting before is it's sitting on empty inside the car, but I've got probably about 3/4 of a tank of gas in here. That needs to be probably snugger than that. All right, moment of truth. There's We'll see if that gauge comes on when we turn the switch on. Pray for me. Oh, looky there. Well, it's showing. It's showing about a half tank of gas. Now, that's okay. I can live with that, because if it's showing a half a tank of gas now, with it having, well, let's see how much it's got. But I mean, it is working. You can see that. Whereas before it wasn't. And the other thing I could do is drive this and see if that level falls. It may be not set at the right height. What do I mean by that? Well, let's see how much gas we got. See, I don't know if that's a half a tank or less. It's hard to tell. Generally, I've been using a stick. Let's see what I got for a stick. According to that stick, we got gas up to there. It never did hit the bottom either. That's a pretty good bit of gas, but you know what? I've had cars before that would show inaccurate, but still good enough to get by. For example, if I went by what this says now, if that gauge went down to empty, I could just fill it up, and I'd still have probably about a half tank gas left, which is fine. I'd rather have too much than too little. I had a Corvette when I was a kid that would run out of gas on a quarter tank, and after I ran out of gas on a quarter tank once, I knew that, and once I knew that, that was never a problem again, because every time I got on a quarter tank, I'd put some gas in there and fix her up. Okay, all right. So let me say this. This is not the first time I've had a sending unit go bad on a car. And what this thing has inside of it, you could see down in there, if you've ever looked in the back of an old radio from back in the, well, probably up through the 50s and the 60s and maybe even into the 70s, there's a little piece of metal inside there that looks like about 1 million pieces that are wound, but they're not actually wound. Usually it's a piece of brass with metal in there that is it has ridges on it, and this slider, when this thing moves, slides up and down that piece of metal. Now where that hits on that piece of metal tells the gauge how much it's got in it. The old-fashioned radios used to have the same thing behind the volume control, and a lot of times they would get where they wouldn't work anymore, and you could take that off and clean up that thing behind the control button and get it to work again when it got to where it wouldn't work. I think what happens is they corrode or something. Even though this is in the gas tank, it can still get moisture on it, because there's gas has, especially this new gas they got has moisture in it, has water in it actually. So anyway, I've had gas gauges go bad, and I haven't had, let me take that back. I've had sending units go bad, but I don't think I've ever had a gas gauge go bad. And I think the reason they go bad is because that thing gets corroded. So anyway, this one is fixed for now. I'll save this old one in case I ever need it for spare parts, but I think I can get by with this one. Now this tank isn't all the way full, and it may be that if I went up to the gas station and put a little bit more gas in there, you know, it might come on up. Right now it's showing about a half a tank. But even if that, you know, even without doing that, if it showed a half or even a quarter, when I see it get down to empty, if I go ahead and put gas in there, I'll never run out, because I'll also always have a plenty. I'll always have a plenty. So I believe with that said, we could, what? I don't know, go on to something else, or go up to the store and get some gas and see how that affects the gas gauge. I don't want any of their old unleaded gas though. I'd want to go someplace that, well, I might have some, I might have enough. I'm pretty sure I probably got another 5 or 6 gallons. I'm guessing the gas is down to about, oh, look at there. See how that's darker and that's lighter? I wonder if that's because of where the gas level is. That looks about right. So that's a little, you know, it's showing a little less than a half a tank, and that's a little more than a half tank, but if that's correct, that ain't off by too much. So to test that gas gauge, I brought it down here and put some gas in it, and oh yeah, that came right up. So I believe that's working. I suppose if I wanted to get really, you know, technically involved, I could pump gas out of the tank and watch it go down, but you know what? I'm convinced that it's good, so we're gonna go with that. Thanks for watching. I appreciate y'all.